it's Kisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children. Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to be talking to Suzanne Axelsson. And Suzanne, welcome to the DEY podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my goodness. I've been watching your work, specifically the Interaction Imagination page that you have on Facebook and your blog, all your wonderful photos. I've been watching that for many years and being absolutely inspired. I know you have a lot of new things that you've been working on because you seem to be a wealth of experience and innovation and information. So I'm so excited to talk to you about your new work, your old work, and anything else you have planned for the future. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I think I'll start in the beginning with the old stuff of why I started writing in the first place. And I was working at a setting where I felt like I had no one to talk to. So my blog became a dialogue with myself, and that other people started reading it is just like a bonus. And I think I've tried to maintain that with my blog and my writing all the time, of telling my story, of my own thoughts of what's going on about the play, about the children, about how do we respect them. Words that have felt complicated, I kind of hash out in my blog to try and understand them better. So the blog has been a place of learning for me. And if it happens to be a place that can either inspire or offer deeper reflection for other people, all the better. So that's why it started. And it's just continued during the course of, it's almost 10 years now since I started. And wow. I know time goes by really fast. And the whole time it's kind of sharing my process. So it's not like finished products ever, which is kind of my play in a sense.
Yes. We do daily write-ups and documentation and at the school. And I started it for teachers to communicate with parents, but in doing it, the practice itself is such professional development for myself, just to step back and think about the day that I just spent with children and how they thought and how they played and what might they have been wondering and what I'm wondering and what that could mean. It's such a good professional development and self-reflection.
Absolutely. And I think taking that time to self-reflect about my own actions and how it's impacted the children and what they've said, and all those times when the children are playing and you suddenly can hear your own voice in them, and you're thinking, oh, maybe I need to change the way I phrase things so that the children can talk more politely with each other. So, it's a learning process the whole time when you see that you're not as good a teacher as you want to be. And so by listening to the children and respecting them, you can kind of change the way you communicate as well. And I think that's really, really important. Hearing your own voice and how it impacts others.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's such a personal thing for you to share. And I really appreciate it because it's easier for us to listen to someone else's story and find ourselves in it, I think, sometimes, than it is for us to be so vulnerable. So I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that, because we're all on a journey. It's, every day I'm learning something different. And you're right. Sometimes it's what not to do from myself. Okay, I'm not going to do that way next time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier seeing it in other people. That I can observe other teachers or whatever's going on, and I go, oh, I don't want to do that. I really want to avoid doing that. But every once in a while, you really catch yourself doing things that you go, I need to adjust that, or I need to learn how to take more control of my patience. I need to get better at really listening and not let my planning and agenda get in the way. All of these things are things I'm trying to work with. It's like, it goes back to when my own children were really, really small, because I had twins the first time. And I learned how to say things differently because otherwise I'd cause problems for myself. I vividly remember that one of my daughters, she must have been about 10 months old, started licking the window. And usually I would have no problem with licking the windows, but I knew I'd just cleaned it and I wasn't too keen on her licking up all the chemicals that I just cleaned it with. So I told her not to lick the window, which of course the other twin heard lick window and crawled full speed over to the window and licked. And that was like my crash course in learning, okay, I have to tell them what I want them to do.
Yes.
So that I can keep them safe, because, you know, it wasn't about, if it'd been a clean window that I'd washed with water, I wouldn't have had any problems. But it was, you know, new motherhood, chemicals, you kind of get a little bit wary about stuff.
Well,
I think it's all of these things.
Yes, I love that, pointing out the even the little intricacies and how we say things, or when we say things, or when we engage versus when we step back and observe. I think that's so important, and it's such an art. Like, and it is the thing about this work is it's ever changing. So the way I may work with one child could be totally different from the way that another child needs to be loved and cared for and talked to. So it's just such a tricky profession, and I think that's what brings me to it and makes me love it. It's so predictable and unpredictable in such a personal way.
Absolutely. It's the joy really in it of having to be constantly creative. I don't think I could have worked in an office, or I don't think I could have worked with adults in the same way that I've thoroughly enjoyed working with children, and being able to have that different kind of honesty that you can have with children that you cannot have with adults, because there's all of these social expectations. And I think working with the youngest children is so powerful, because what I want to do is to help them to see all the stories and not get locked from a really early age into this single story of this is the way we do it, and you can only do it like this, and this, you can only think like this, and this is right and not, that's all wrong. And I think striving to find multiple ways to play the same thing, multiple ways to paint the same thing, is all part of this process of helping the children to play their way into multiple possibilities instead of being told how to do things all the time.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I think loose parts and just things that don't have assigned one ways to use them are the most valuable assets that we have in the classroom. Because like you said, you can use it and reuse it and rethink it, turn it the other way. You know, it just doesn't have a script, and it doesn't narrow the dynamic thinking that young children have. So I'm really a fan of young children and open-ended just materials, you know, just stuff. I mean, how many ways can you think to use this? And it's endless. As they age, as they change, the materials just grow and change with them.
Absolutely. And I think adults frequently forget one of the most important ingredients of loose parts is their adult attitude towards them. And if you have an attitude that a loose part can only be used in certain ways, then you've limited the affordances, how many different ways you can use that part, and how it can interact with different parts as well. So I think our own attitudes towards the possibilities and the potentials is really important. And usually that comes in with risk. I think a lot of people get a little bit scared about the child might hurt themselves, or might do this, or you know, these kind of risky things. And I think a lot of loose parts that get really exciting have that kind of risk to them, but they don't get that full experience from them because of adult attitudes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a new project. A couple new projects. I think the original learning approach is pretty new. Is that right?
Yeah, something I coined, I think it was in 2018, in my extreme frustration of the dichotomy of play and learning, as if they were two different things, and learning and teaching had a higher status than play. And for me, they've always been interwoven. So I see the original learning as a loom, where the threads going down, the warp threads, are play. And then we weaving in the teaching and the learning and the understanding. And if you don't have enough play threads, then you're not going to have a good fabric, or your learning fabric. So you've got to have this equality of play, learning, teaching, for there to be understanding. And I think at the moment, a lot of schools and a lot of preschools that have an academic focus, they're focusing on facts. They're not focusing on knowledge and understanding, that they're facts. This is information. It's not about getting to know. And it's through play, which essentially is connected to time, that children get to experience how to connect these facts to other facts, to their own creativity and imagination, to their joy, to start understanding all of these things. So it's kind of complicated yet simple. And I have like essential threads to weave into this loom. I'm talking about birth now. It's children. Makes sense, doesn't it?
It makes sense.
In some kind of illogical way. Anyway, into this loom come the essential threads, which can be used in both play and teaching. And these are wonder, curiosity, joy, knowledge, imagination, interaction, risk, time, reflection, and listening. So if we start thinking about how we bring joy into the learning, how we bring knowledge into play and the learning. So all of these things need to kind of be interwoven all the time. And I think a lot of learning, a lot of teaching is so without joy, or without imagination, or without curiosity. And we need all of these things to kind of motivate the brain to give it meaning. Because if we think about what is the actual act of play, my husband's a neuroscientist, so I asked him what's happening in the brain. And he said, play is the brain's way of adapting to a complex world. So we need play, and it's rewarded. The brain rewards ourselves to be able to engage in stuff we don't understand, engage in things for our well-being. So, and it releases endorphins, so we keep on doing it. So basically, the brain's natural way to learn is play, where there's joy and there's choice and there's autonomy. And what the original learning approach is trying to do is, in the teaching, we respond to the play by ensuring that what we're teaching incorporates the joy, incorporates the natural curiosity, and engages those endorphins so that children naturally want to learn, so that lessons are shifting more into play. They might start off as a teacher-led inspiration, but then the children take over and the teacher steps back to let the children get on with it. But it also requires that as educators, we need to really observe what the children are playing, how they're playing, what they're learning, how they're learning, so that we can really create play responsive lessons or education in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And is this something that you are working with schools that have children in the school age? I know in the US, our school age starts at year 5 years old. So are you working with programs or schools that have children 5 and above, or is this approach specific to early childhood?
I work with children up to the age of 6, because here in Sweden, preschool is until the age of 6. Then they go, the year that they turn 6, they will start school in what is called a preschool class. So somewhere between school and preschool. And then when they're 7, or the year that they turn 7, that's when they start first grade. So everything's a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm writing my book, I write that that children in schools can do this as well. It shouldn't be restricted, this approach, to just the early years. This is something that should continue. I really believe that the early years needs to influence schools much more than schools need to influence the early years.
Exactly. I'm sitting here thinking that you should go to every single school for children 7 and above and share this, because we don't suddenly stop learning in this way when we hit 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, or really, in my opinion, ever. I play around with stuff to figure it out. Get a new phone. I don't read the manual. I play around with it until I figure it out.
Absolutely.
And I think that schools internationally really would do better, much better, creating and supporting wonderful, creative, innovative humans if they made more time for this play and this responsive approach that you speak of. So please share it with older people.
Oh, that's my intention. I really, really hope that that's where, and I'm trying to, by calling original learning as well, is try and get it so that people in schools will be reading. I connect a lot with teachers in schools here as well, not just in preschools. And again, my hope is when I go to other countries to try and meet schools, not just the early years, because I think it's so sad that the early years is undervalued in the way it is. And I think a lot of this is to do with multiple reasons, but two of the reasons I feel are children have a lower status in society. They're not valued, and women are not valued. And early years is often considered women's work, and it's care rather than learning. And yet for me, care is an important part of the learning, because if you don't feel cared for, if you don't feel love, and care and love come in the joy part, you can't experience joy. If you don't have a sense of safety and well-being, you're not going to be able to learn. And I think the majority of children probably would not feel safe in school every single day, all day long. There's lots of children that will be experiencing anxiety. And when I asked my husband about, when does the brain stop learning and playing? And he said it's when the world is too simple. So there's no like complexity in your world, or if you were afraid. And I think so much school is based on fear of getting the grades, don't do this, don't do that, I'm watching you, which makes people afraid to do things. And if we're fear-based, then we're not going to access the education fully. And then for so many reasons, children are othered in schools and are not valued for multiple reasons. So the whole intersectional part of it. So it's not just that their children are not valued. There's whole massive, from autism to culture to racism to ability to all of these different things. There's far too many of them where children get othered, and so they're not feeling safe because of the way teachers and adults treat them, or the way society treats them, and I think bullying has a lot to do with a lack of autonomy. If you have no autonomy, you will seek it out somewhere else. And bullying, I think, is, especially in schools, you don't see it as much in preschool or the early years, I think, is a way to exert a kind of autonomy, a sort of power.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I also think that bullying is what children do, mimicking what the adults do, right?
Yes.
So if you're in an
Oh,
environment
absolutely.
where the adults are threatening and they're using carrot and stick methods,
Mm,
and you're not feeling respected, that's the culture that's created
absolutely.
around you, right? So that's how
Yes.
you're going to live within that culture. So um, that's all the more reason. I mean, we should always be mindful of how we speak to children, how we speak with children, and how
Mm,
we speak and engage with each other in the
mm,
presence of children. And I think just them seeing that over and over, home, at school, in just in our society, that's something that they're picking up. So I see a lot of programs creating, these cookie cutter approaches to stopping bullying, or campaigns. And I think what we really need is to look at ourselves
mm.
and figure out what information we're giving down to children as to how we are supposed to treat each other. They're learning it
absolutely.
from us. They're learning it from the adults in the world.
And if we're creating classrooms and groups, early years groups, where the children experience that everyone cares for each other, that there's an equity, there is space for everyone to be both leaders and followers, and that followers in the play is equally respected, that everyone has a choice to play multiple roles, everyone feels they can participate to their full capacity, everyone, all of the children and teachers feel that they can contribute and influence their day and their learning and their play, then you'll see that there's very little of this kind of bullying sort of behavior of trying to find the power, because they're already satisfied with that sense of well-being that comes with being empowered, of being valued, of being a part of the community.
And that's why I think this type of care, or this approach to working with children of all ages, is so important, because this is the time where they're developing their self-image. Like, who am I? What am I capable of? And who am I in the context of other people? And if we skip that step, which we are doing here in the US, it's getting skipped in a lot of cases. If we skip that step, we end up with school shootings and high anxiety rates and high suicide rates. And it's really, you know, vital to the human development. It's not just play. It's not just something that you do outside of the real work. It is the brain's way of learning. Your husband was correct.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well,
and play is not something that children do. Our brains never stop playing, because when we're adults, we don't need to play, can my body jump down here? Can mummies and daddies, playing all of these different things that young children are still discovering about the world. We play different things because that's what our brain needs to do to adapt to our own experiences, our own knowledge. So how we play is going to continuously shift. Is that thing, you know, when we disappear and suddenly you pop out of a timer, you go, wow, that went by fast. That joyful moment where an hour feels like a couple of minutes. It's when the brain has been playing. And that's that kind of endorphins that we want to keep going back at. So, and that doesn't stop just because we become adults. It continues, it's just a different way. But for some unearthly reason, the way that children play is just not valued.
We have amnesia. We forget. I mean, a lot of times when I do workshops, I we talk about remembering our childhood, but we're remembering it from our adult brain. I try to do an exercise where we try, it's hard, but try to see those moments from our childhood self, because I feel like you get a whole different experience, a whole different memory from that versus, you know, seeing it from who we are right now and knowing what we know now. It just, when I started doing that for myself as a practice, it really helped me understand children and remember those things. I mean, I remember I used to spin around and around and around and around and around until I just fell out and my head was so dizzy. And, you know, now as an adult, many people see that as purposeless, but I really found joy in that. And then not only did I find joy, but it helps you with your balance and with your hearing and with your core muscles and all of those things that we need for development. But as a child, I just knew my body needed to do that. So going back to trying to like feel those feelings and experience that again as my childhood self, it really, really helped me appreciate children and their ability to seek out what they need. You know, just like you said, the adult's brain, we are playing differently because our brain needs different things. We already have experienced the how high can I jump kind of things. Well, I don't know. Some people are still playing jumping out of airplanes as adults. So some people need to continue.
Isn't it?
Yes. Yep. Some people need to continue that risk. I was that child who climbed as high as I could in the tree, jumped from, you know, I was the risk-taking child. So therefore, as an adult, I think it's easier for me to witness children taking risks. What my fear is now is that we're starting to have a generation of teachers who may not have experience outside and risk-taking and adventure as maybe I did or you did as children, because it's not as with all of the push down and all the early academics, they're not getting that time that we got. So that has become a tricky thing to help them see the value in it if they haven't experienced it themselves.
And I think culture plays a part in that as well. And your context, I mean, here in Sweden, we have free healthcare for everybody. So we know that if children are going to have an accident or need hospital care or some kind of care, it's not going to break their bank. They can afford it. And where every preschool is insured by the state, not by ourselves. The state insures every child, so that if they do have an accident, they can claim insurance, the parents, to maybe have corrective surgery if they get a little cut. My son fell over on the ice and had a small scar above by his eyebrow, and the option to claim on the insurance was there, so he could have corrective surgery if he wanted. He chose not to, but it was there. And I think this gives us as teachers a bigger freedom to allow these children to engage in risky play, but still cultures from abroad. I mean, the US has this impact over the world, and I don't think it's a good thing. I think it should be more give and take, because it's kind of putting the pressure on of being risk aversive, of having more control, of pushing down the learning. And at the moment, I feel like in Sweden, we're having to defend play. Play exists. I think in the US, you're having to fight for it and say, look, we need it. While in Sweden, we're in a place where, oh, you just can't take this away from us.
Well, I hope that somehow we all find a way to make things like, we're trying right now, universal healthcare happen. And that's a good point that you connected to. That hopefully will trickle down the idea that risk is okay, that we have something to fall back on, because you're right. There are situations where people are rightfully fearful because a hospital visit could bankrupt their family. So we can see some shifts in so many different directions when and if we do get universal health care, free preschool like you guys have, just so many wonderful things coming up. Hopefully that pass with high quality, appropriate, play-based education for young children and up. I love the idea that you stated about, you think that preschool should be pushing up instead of the older ages pushing down. I'm totally with that. And you have an amazing body of work, and if anybody wants to get in contact with you, learn more from you, hear more from you, I know you do presentations all over the place. Do you mind telling us how we can contact you? And any other information you want to share with our listeners?
So on Facebook, it's Interaction Imagination is my page there. And I also have a Instagram with the same name. So messages can reach out in those directions. My email is Suzanne@interactionimagination.com. So nice and easy. And so you can reach out to me that way. I love answering questions and doing as much as I can, the best I can with the time I have. And I've also recently started a project together with two art therapists, Roberta Pucci, who lives in Italy, Reggio Emilia, and Nona Orbach in Israel. And we're trying to get the play and the freedom and the autonomy through art, so that children can scribble for as long as they need and can play with the materials for as long as we need. And so kind of the play and play work ideas are popping up into in the art studio there, which I'm feeling really excited about that project. And that's called Grammar of Drawing. So if people are interested in how to access play and teaching and supporting children's autonomy in the art studio, then go check out that project too.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. I know that our listeners just got a wealth of information, and I really appreciate it. And I'll keep my eye out for the great projects you're doing and continue on the wonderful work. Thank you for all you do for the ECE community.
And equally back to you there. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And that was another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Defending the Early Years works to support the rights and needs of young children nationally. Learn more at DEY.org. Pay us a visit, sign up for our newsletter, or connect with us on social media. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.